Mixing with Mike, plugin of the week comes from Plugin Alliance. It's the Amek 250. The Amek 250 is going to look very similar. It's going to look a lot like the Amek 200. Now, there's a similar lineage which goes back to the late 1960s, but they are two distinctly different equalizers. And I'm going to do a quick demonstration to compare a little bit of the two of them just so you can understand the differences, because they do sound quite different from each other. And they do not phase out from each other, in case you have not tried that test already or are curious. And I'm going to show you that as well. So from the basic design, it's very much like the 8200. Same 5-band design. You could take the bands in and out individually. Has the same gain adjustment here, so you can make the gain a finer resolution, minus plus 6 instead of plus minus 12. I think the numbers are a little bit different on the 8200, but same basic concept. The Q range here, same kind of idea. It's a bell curve for the low shelf and high shelf, but you could switch it into shelving mode, so you have that as an option as well. Let's see. Otherwise, all of the other bands are pretty much the same, very similar frequencies between the two. You see there's a lot of overlap here, right? So the range here on the low shelf, it goes down to 15 here, down to 120 there. So you can see there's a lot of overlap between the bands, even coming from the top all the way up to 25K with a parametric booster attenuation. This is basically a mastering grade EQ. Now, what makes it unique or different from most mastering EQs, which replication ends up being an important part, is that there are not fixed boost attenuation points or fixed frequencies, which you find with quite a lot. Makes it easy to replicate the settings exactly as you had them. Otherwise, you're kind of doing it by eye, and you may not get the exact same results. So with this version, you get the fully sweepable EQ, and in that sense, it's a fully parametric EQ. I'm going to get back to the history of that in a minute. So we have all of that. There's a high pass and low pass filter. Now, these are not part of the original unit. So in the original Sontec MEP 250EX, there is no high pass, low pass filter. And there is not one on the 8200 either, so this is added in. Also, the features here in the middle are added in, other than the EQ in and out. The invert gain just makes all the pluses minuses and all the minuses pluses, right? So you can actually just reverse what it is that you're EQing. Sometimes it helps you to hear things more clearly. And then there's a gain scale, allowing you to scale the overall gain to make it more dramatic or less dramatic. So, for example, a plus minus 3 dB boost on 2 different bands. If you increase this up to 200%, would be plus minus 6 dB instead of plus minus 3 dB. Or bring it back, you get the idea. There's also an auto listen feature, so as you adjust EQ, you can hear what it is, the frequency band specifically that you're working on, if you want to do that. So all of those features are there. You can set this up to be stereo or mid-side. That's done down here in the tray. If the tray is not showing, click on the link up here on the right, and that will show that there for you. Right now, this also has the TMT, right? So I'm switching that off for the demonstration, which you'll see in a second. There's an input gain and an output gain, harmonic distortion, so you could drive it a little bit if you like. Parameter link will link the left and right channels. Otherwise, you can operate also in, you could turn it off. You could operate in mid-side mode, right? So this becomes mid, this becomes side, all the usual stuff. So we also have the mono maker, stereo width control. So those are all kind of normal additions to all of the BrainWorks products, and most of them anyway. All right, so that's the basics of it here, just as an overall graphic user interface. So you also have the ability to solo the mid or solo the side channel, right? So that's also available to you just here on the top end here with all of that, all of the settings and stuff. All right, so let's go to a quick thing. I just wanted to show you something here. I'm going to take the tray away for a second here and open up the Amek 200, right? So you could see very similar design, whatever, colors are a little bit different, knobs a little bit different shaped or whatever, or colored. Same basic layout. All right, so what is the difference? The difference goes back to the late 60s. One of the people involved was George Massenburg, who went on to create George Massenburg Labs, GML. The other was Burgess McNeil, who went on to create Sontec, which is the 2500. So those are the two. They worked together for a studio in Baltimore, building a console that had fully sweepable frequencies. So this was something that didn't exist. So they basically wanted to get rid of inductors. They wanted a clean, amazing sounding surgical EQ with no inductors and no switches. That was the basic conceptual idea. And they achieved that end. And in 1971 at AES, they brought the very first fully parametric EQ, giving you sweepable gain, sweepable frequencies, and bandwidth control, all in one unit. So that was their big evolution, their big contribution, a huge one. They were together with a company called ITI, International Telecom Inc., that eventually broke down. Burgess McNeil took the basic patents from that and created Sontec. GML went on to do his own thing, but you could see the design is extremely similar. Even if you look at the hardware units, you'll see that there's a lot of similarity between them. Okay, so let's talk about it. So what I did here was I set up something where I have these two basic things in a trim here just out of phase. I wanted to make sure that the gain was exactly the same, so the gain is the same. I went through a process of phase inverting just so I could hear the two of them and see what the differences were. So if I just play a little bit, what I have here, just to show you quickly, is I set this up in digital mode, so there's no TMT stuff going on. I took the high-pass, low-pass filters out because that's not part of the original design. And same up here. And also if I open up the tray here, we're also in digital mode, right? So that should be identical on both sides. Phase inverted, so what happens is if I play just one, we'll get the audio. Here, if I play this, I solo this up too. Now this is an inverted phase, but going through this, there is a difference. All right, so not a ton of difference. You could see that the peaks that are up there actually when I was playing are somewhere around like -30, but there is a difference between the two. So there's different stuff going on. Now, what I wanted to do is I set up a basic EQ between the two, and I made them identical, right? So ±3 dB boost on a shelf, right, at 620. Did the same thing up on this end, matched the frequencies, did a little, so I did a little dip there on a shelf, did a 80 hertz bump at 3 dB, just to make this clear, 3 dB boost on a shelf starting at 1.8K. And I duplicated the settings on both, matched everything up, gain is all the same, frequency's all the same, shelf all the same, and wanted to see, all right, well, how do they sound different from each other? So I'm going to take this phase inversion out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and forth. So if we listen here, what we'll have with this on this side is the Amek 250, right? So this will be the Sontec here, the first one. When I switch over to here, that'll be the GML 8200, or the Amek 200, as it's called here. And you'll be able to hear the difference straight away. So let's listen to it. All right, so I'm going to go back. Let's switch to the other one. Right, so you could hear it's like a completely different sound. When I first did this and I compared it, I thought it would be much more similar, and to the point where I thought it sounds like there's more gain in the 8200 or the 8250, or I'm sorry, the EQ Amek 250, excuse me. Uh, I went back, did a phase inversion, and tried to see if like changing the gain to see if there was a differential there. Nope. So part of this may just be the shape. It's probably a combination of a lot of things. It mostly must be a component kind of difference thing. Maybe it's just the transformers. I'm not sure or clear if the 8200 even has transformers on inputs and outputs, so I'm not clear about that part of it or what the differences may be. But obviously, there's a thicker, ballsier kind of sound straight away, much more open sound to the EQ 250. Now, I know the 8200 very, very well. I've never worked with this specific Sontec EQ, so I don't have any hardware specific experience, although I do have a lot of experience working with the 8200, and I loved it. It doesn't have that rich, ballsy low end. It's very transparent, okay, and very open sounding. So what happens here is very much what it sounds like, and it's very surgical in its precision and ability to, notch things out and do things in a very transparent way. This, though, is adding something extra to it, whether it's coming from the actual components, whether it's the quality of the amplifiers, whatever it is that makes this work or makes this tick or makes this sound the way that it sounds. I like this. And so really, I wanted to shoot this video more or less to just demonstrate that and show you that there is a significant difference in the sound for those that are asking. And this thing kicks ass. Otherwise, any other normal EQ operations that you're doing, you can perform here. So twiddling with the knobs and going through the settings, I'm not sure is going to make that big of a difference in terms of your decision to buy. But this one sounds killer. Really digging it. And that's the basis for the review here, and just to kind of show you what's going on. So there you have it. Plugin of the week. Definitely worth picking up if you already have the Amek 200. From Plugin Alliance, it's the Amek 250, emulation of the Sontec MEP 250EX.